whether or not it's fit for purpose and whether it's serving the people of Auckland as well as it might. So on first reading of this report, my inclination was that maybe reorganisation should be left with the governing body, because that could then be part of another stream of work that it seems like some councillors wish to be involved with. I'd really like your guidance, sir, on, in order that we can be effective, because I've actually just scanned my the history on my emails, and there's about 7 letters that we've written to governments just since 2012 on the need for reorganisation and changes to the legislation, all of which have been met with deaf ears. So I'm curious to know your position and the guidance that you would give us, or the determination you have to actually bring about some legislative change, and if so, would it be better then for the governing body to oversee this body of work, which is I realise Rose is going to correct me in terms of whether it's unrelated, but in some ways it's part of the whole structure of the Auckland Council. And I do appreciate that the representation review is just something that we are doing on a regular basis and we roll it over and do that. But this could be the moment in time where we actually look at where the legislation isn't fit for purpose and bring in reorganisation into that. And if so, is the governing body interested in actually taking a more proactive stance and advocacy on that? So, Your Worship, what's your view?
Well, thank you for those 27 good questions.
Good.
Up in one. First of all, am I determined that we should make some changes? Yes, I am. I've found that we will need a multi-pronged approach to prod government into this. Julie Ferry, who's the next speaker, is leading representational or reorganisational, which one of those bloody things, which one?
Already leading the rep review, Your Worship.
Yes, so she's working on that anyhow, and she'll presumably, her question will add to my explanation. A multi-pronged approach is what we're having, and you need that because we have every 3 years we change government, and that's coming up, and every few weeks we change the Minister of Auckland, and that's interesting as well. So you have to keep at it on all fronts. I've spoken to 2 Prime Ministers, 1 acting Prime Minister and 1 Prime Minister hopefully in waiting, that's what he thinks about these things. And there is an appetite. I've spoken to lots of the local boards, and they're quite keen to move forward in some changing of various bits and pieces that are wrong with it. And so I think we take all the... I think the governing body has an overview, but there's 21 of us, which is far too many anyhow. So I think we'll stick with Councillor Ferry's group, working closely with Rose and Warwick, and I'll keep plugging away. We are within my office developing a bit of a manifesto for Auckland, which I'm going to put out with some, and you're welcome to have input in this during the LTP, of what are the things we would really like from both of the major parties. I'm not connected to either of them. And over the next, whilst they're busy out there promising bridges and God knows what that we didn't ask for, what are the things we'd like from them as a council during the next few months of grand promises before the election? And so that's another thing that I said I would do before I was elected, try and encourage a bit of an auction between the two for doing things about Auckland, because we've been done to by the legislation that set it up, the city, the council. There's a lot of things wrong with it. And so so my answer is an omnibus of answers, if that's all right, and an omnibus approach. And I think that when we get to this, I will take, and this is the recommendation, if I understand correctly, which on this complex is an omnibus approach from you two anyhow, isn't it? We do both things, running both bicycles at the same time in the same direction. Is that correct? I think that sums it up, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I've got that bit. That's good. And so I will move to Councillor Ferry now, having hopefully dealt with your question. Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Ferry, are you out there still?
Yes, very much. My question is more about the time frame. Obviously, the Joint Governance Working Party's got quite a grunty piece of work at the moment around the local board funding, and anticipating that needs to be landed in order to inform the mayoral proposal for the LTP coming out October, November. So I'm just wanting to clarify, my understanding was that if this work does go to the Joint Governance Working Party, it will come, we'll do them both at the same time, and that it will be after we've completed that piece of work. I'm just thinking of the capacity issues. Is that correct?
Through you, Your Worship. With the representation review, there's a statutory time frame to meet and a requirement to give public notice for submissions around about mid-year next year. Our thinking with the reorganisation application, where we also need to assess our community support, is that we don't confuse the public by going out twice, but we go out at the same time. And so at the moment, our thinking is that if the governing body wishes to proceed with this ultimately, then we would be looking at consulting with the public about mid-year next year at the same time as we consult about the representation review. I hope that assists with the timeline.
And through the chair, councillor.
Thank you, yes.
Yes, we intend to start our work with you once you're sort of starting to wrap up the work that you're currently doing.
Great. And I think the point's already been made that it is timely actually to do a reorganisation. For those who are familiar with some of the central government representation processes, they every 6 years also do a representation type review where they look at things like seat boundaries and making sure the balance is right. And yeah, we have to do that as a representation review, but it makes sense to do it at the same time. And I think after 13 years, yeah, it's time to kick the wheels and see if this model does work. I'm probably less concerned about the fact that I feel like it does work okay now, but obviously there's going to be a range of views at the table, and we're going to need to go back and forth between the Governance Working Party and governing body and indeed local boards before we finalise anything that can go out to the community for further consultation. Thanks.
Thank you for that question and responsibility, and thank you for the work you're doing, Councillor Ferry. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, just seeking a little clarification on what emerges from passing C there. So at the outset of this paper, there's reference made to the recommendations of the Royal Commission at the start there, and of course in respect of local boards or local councils, as they referred to them, that saw them reducing down to 11, I think it was, from memory. So in this process, the Joint Governance Working Party picks up what they may see as being appropriate for reorganisation and takes it back to the governing body. I guess just in terms of you know, the rigour with which this is pursued, it kind of assumes the Governance Working Party, you know, has an appetite for doing something if you go to just one distinct group, and given that a number of people are local boards, you know, who knows what their view would be. I don't want to prejudge that. So we're kind of reliant on the Governance Working Party driving this, aren't we, essentially, what that means, and the governing body will respond to what's put before them.
Through the chair, yes, they will be developing the options, but if you've got anything that you want to have input into there, I'm sure that Councillor Ferry would be willing to consider that. This isn't an excluding process. Anyone can come to the Joint Governance Working Party.
Well, I'm on that group, so I don't think I'll have to put it to her. I'll be able to put it myself.
Good.
I'm just probably thinking of the balance of the council and the mayor, who seems to be the prompter for this. So just curious to know how that's sort of covered in a way that gives everything due diligence and, you know, incorporates all points of view.
Good question, and I think Rose is right. It's open to everybody, and we're just keeping you informed. And so, and we've got an LTP where everyone's been asked to think about everything as well, and that may as well be part of that. We're saying we're going to lift every stone and have a look. I've got Councillor Foley and then Councillor Hills. Councillor Foley, are you out there somewhere?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My questions, I guess my concerns are similar to Councillor Watson's, but I do support it being driven by or looked more closely at by Councillor Ferry's group, the Joint Governance Working Party. I'm concerned that, you know, we do need to really listen to our local boards as well. So I'm, you know, eager for our local boards to have good input, and I believe that, you know, using the Joint Governance Group will be good for that. My question for the staff is around what effect the consultation going out around the Māori seats might have on these questions being posed. Like, are we also going to look at and ask people about an increasing number of wards? Because if, you know, the Māori question comes back positive, then obviously looking at more wards may be part of that as well. Don't know if staff are able to answer that question.
Through the chair, they're related matters, as you've quite well picked up, Councillor Foley. So we're going to talk to you about Māori wards in our next paper, but you're dead right. The number of wards affects the number of Māori seats you're able to have. So from 0 to 7 wards, there is no ability for us to have a Māori seat, a Māori ward. From 8 to 22, there is the ability to have 1 Māori ward. If there are more, there's the ability to have up to and no more than 2 Māori wards. I just wanted to pick up that there's legislation before the House, so government has listened to us one little bit, particularly around the lift of the cap for the number of councillors. So it's number 11 on the order paper today. Government, all our officials at DIA inform us that it's government's intention to get through this bill, which will allow us the same opportunity as any other council in New Zealand to have between 5 and 29 councillors. So we could have less, we could have more. That is your decision. But I just wanted to just draw that right through, Councillor Foley. So the number of wards we have does affect the number of Māori seats we have.
Kia ora, thank you for that. Thanks.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, Chair. Mayor, thank you. The just question for me is that the development of a reorganisation plan, does that exclude the working party actually saying that we don't want any reorganisation? Because it's sort of saying when they needed to develop a plan or options for reorganisation, but what if they come back and say they don't want to do that?
That's in scope. Yep.
Okay, and so the thing that they could do, which I think makes a lot of sense in my opinion, they could just, if they don't want to do any major reorganisation, they could just match the local board boundaries with ward boundaries, like we've discussed has been difficult in the past. That could be one option.
That's correct.
Thank you.
An enormously sensible option, which why that never took place is there is no explanation, apparently. Councillor Lee, who was probably back around when it happened.
I think I'll leave my question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Leone.
Just a quick one, and I know we're going to talk about the Māori wards consultation afterwards, but just on that comment that you made earlier around the impact. So would that only be, you know, if we had the Royal Commissioning model, would the same rules still stand?
Through the chair, there's no ability for us, or limited ability for us to change legislation in time to have the Royal Commission model in time for 2025. We could do it later if that's what you wish. But the number of seats in the Act at the moment, in the Acts at the moment, actually it's 2, so the number of ward councillors impacts the number of seats. It's not the number of total councillors. The number of ward councillors impacts the number of Māori seats we would have under the parliamentary model.
Okay, well, I've finished with questions. Are we in a position to move and it's been moved and seconded. I'm going to put this, unless there's somebody else who's got something to say. No, I'm going to put this. All those in favour of accepting this, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary?
Aye.
Oh, did you say no? Okay, we're not going to accept that. And do you want to not accept it?
Sorry. I was going to make a comment, but I don't want to hold the meeting up.
Okay, right. So, do you want to record that, Councillor Fletcher? Okay. All those, it's carried with one notable exception. We're going to take a huge leap of faith and move to item 10, which is the Māori seats. Approval